Hi, everybody. This is SAAD for the SAAD Truth. In two of my books, The Consuming Instinct and The Evolutionary Bases of Consumption, and also in several of my scientific articles, I talk about cultural products as fossils of the human mind. And so the idea is that while paleontologists can use skeletal remains and fossils to reconstruct the phylogenetic history of a species, human brains are organic; they don't fossilize. But what I argue does fossilize are the cultural products that they leave behind. So we could study some ancient Greek tragedy from thousands of years ago and fully understand what the issues were that the author in question was talking about, precisely because even though we're separated by thousands of years and very, very different cultures, our shared biological heritage is exactly the same. And so, one of the things that I do in both of my books that I mentioned a few moments ago is I go through a very, very long list of cultural products where I analyze, for example, a movie plot line or a television plot line or a religious narrative or whatever the cultural form. I analyze it to demonstrate that they contain certain contents that are indicative of some very foundational evolutionary principles. And so, what I thought today would be fun to do is something that I recently finished covering in both my MBA seminar in consumer behavior and my MSc PhD course, Consumer Psychology and Decision Making. And this is where I actually go through a lot of these cultural products and demonstrate how they are indicative. They are a window to our human nature. So I'll start with, now I guess you have to be of a certain age to understand some of the references here. For the first time ever, I had students who had never watched Seinfeld. And so maybe I need to now introduce new examples for the most recent, most current generation. So if you remember in Seinfeld, there are four characters, three males and a female, main ones, the main characters. And arguably the most famous episode is one where they decide to make a bet to see who would resist their masturbatory urges for the longest amount of time. And I think the euphemism in this case was master of my domain. So if you don't succumb to your urges, then you remain master of your domain. And so how might we analyze this from an evolutionary perspective? Well, at the start of the bet, everyone realizes that it will not be as difficult for the female character to resist her urges, and therefore she has to put in more money into the pot. So already that recognizes a universal sex difference between the two sexes. Two sexes. I must be engaging in biological essentialism and fixed binaries. Please don't report me to the Canadian Senate. Now, as the episode progresses, and as each person, if you like, succumbs to their urges and is no longer a master of their domain, the thing to study there from an evolutionary perspective is what is the stimulus that sets you over the edge. And in the case of, for example, Kramer, it's the fact that there is a neighbor that he could see within his visual sight who is a beautiful young woman, scantily clad, who's sort of exercising in all sorts of alluring positions. And so the recognition that the visual stimulus is a, if you like, sexually dimorphic reality. Women are not going to be as sexually aroused by visual stimuli as men are. That's why we don't have as many strip bars targeting heterosexual women as we do strip bars targeting heterosexual men and homosexual men. So in any case, he loses the bet. Now let's look at the female character. In her case, what drives her over the proverbial masturbatory cliff is that she had met John F. Kennedy Jr., who in real life eventually ended up dying in a plane crash. John F. Kennedy is a very handsome man, a tall man, one who, of course, had was very wealthy, very powerful. One day, some people thought that he might follow in the footsteps of his dad and maybe run for political office. And so she is fantasizing about being with him, but specifically, she's fantasizing about being with him as a long term union. So, again, all of the plot line that's driving that theme would not make sense if it were not of that exact form. What allows Larry David, the co creator of Seinfeld, and what allows Jerry Seinfeld to now be many hundreds of millions of dollars wealthy is because of syndication around the world, is because even though the language might change when you translate it into Urdu or Arabic, people understand those plot lines in exactly those forms, precisely because they speak to a shared human nature. I'll give you one other example, although I think if you're interested in these kinds of analyses, I really do go over many of these examples in my books and in my, as I said, in several of my papers. There's a famous movie that came out in, I think it was 1993, Indecent Proposal, with Woody Harrelson, the guy who played the hapless bartender on Cheers, Demi Moore, and Robert Redford. For those of you who don't know, Robert Redford, now is an older gentleman, but in the 70s, he was arguably the premier sex symbol in Hollywood, a very desirable man. So in 1993, he might have been, I don't know, maybe in his mid-50s, somewhere around there. And so in the movie, he plays a rich industrialist, very dashing rich industrialist, who meets this young couple, Demi Moore and Woody Harrelson, who are having financial troubles, and they go, I think it was to Las Vegas, to sort of bet the money to see if they could hit it big to get them out of the financial hole that they're in. And at one point, they meet this gentleman, this rich industrialist, and I think it was it's been many years since I've seen the movie, but I think they were playing pool. They start having sort of a hypothetical conversation regarding whether everyone has a price. Can you make someone stop and think about anything that you might want them to do if the price is right? And the young idealist couple says, "Oh, absolutely not. You can't. There are things that you can't buy." And of course, the seasoned industrialist puts them to task, or as Nassim Taleb would say, "Let's see some skin in the game." And he says, "All right, how about I give you $1 million, but I get to spend the night, sleep with your beautiful wife." He didn't quite say it in such direct terms. And then, really what drives the movie, both prior to them actually agreeing to do it and then subsequent to it happening, what drives that tension, the whole point, the whole drama, the currency, the emotional currency of the movie is rooted in the fact that it is precisely much more difficult for a man to agree to sexually share his wife than it would be the other way around. If it were Oprah who was replacing Robert Redford in the movie, and Oprah said, "Oh, hey, how about I get to sleep with your man for $1 million?" then probably the movie would have ended after 10 minutes, because Demi Moore's character would have said, "Don't let the door hit his ass on the way out, and please deposit the $1 million in Swiss bank 137249. What I mean by that is that it isn't equally difficult for men and women to imagine that reality. Now, that doesn't mean that women are terribly pleased about sharing their man sexually with another woman. Of course not. But it doesn't carry the same connotations for very obvious reasons: paternity, uncertainty. So in any case, these are just two examples. There are many, many others that I cover where I basically take a cultural form, hone in on a particular theme, particular stimulus, and then demonstrate that it exists in that form and it is understood around the world precisely because it speaks to timeless human universals. So there you have it. This is the approach that I've used in trying to understand cultural forms, cultural products from an evolutionary perspective. Hope you're having a good day. It's absolutely gorgeous here in Montreal. The brown skin is coming back in full force. So I'm already seeing that I am moving up in the Oppression Olympics podium. Cheers, everybody. Ciao.